Hi everyone, Blackthany Startano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new David Bowie record, Blackstar. The Thin White Duke, David Bowie, legendary singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, entertainment icon, and up until very recently, alive. And I know that last part of my description might sound kind of callous. However, it does play Bowie's death very much into the theme and the lyrics of this record in such a way, I don't think this piece of context could be ignored. It's essential to the narrative of this record. This record over here is the follow-up to Bowie's last album, 2013's The Next Day. An album that ended a 10-year studio album silence for Bowie, as he came back with a sound that emulated his older work, but with a heightened sense of self-awareness, maybe to the point where it was a little tongue-in-cheek. And on his latest project over here, Bowie seems just as aware and conscious of his musical past and relevancy, but not in a way where it feels like he's trying to redo anything blatantly, more in that he's trying to plow forward into some real experimental and left field territory that is definitely going to challenge listeners and hardcore fans. Now, this record is a very different project for Bowie, mostly because I think he was in a very different place as he was recording and writing it. And that place is the threshold of death. A lot of artists, no matter what the medium, explore the concept of death. It's a pretty universal theme, a theme that audiences are interested in as well, since it's going to be a part of their experience in life too, or has been via the deaths of people around them. But I can't think of another instance where it's been so clear that an artist was exploring this theme face to face, literally like head on, because now we know with David Bowie's passing, he had a pretty intense battle with cancer going for the past 18 months. It's almost like his job was done here, and now that his swan song had been released, it was time for him to move beyond. And it's like the lyrics and the music videos attached to these songs turned Bowie's oncoming death into an art project. And I don't mean in such a way where it cheapens his death. As a listener, you can kind of, in a strange way, touch death vicariously through the music of this record. Tracks like Lazarus and Blackstar and I Can't Give Everything Away alone, these three tracks alone, throw a heap of morbid and occult imagery into the lap of the listener. But moving away from the context a bit and talking about what's going on with this record musically speaking, before the release of this record, Bowie had cited Death Grips and Kendrick Lamar as influences for his music on this record, and I think those influences do show up when listening to this thing, but in a very subtle way. In the instrumentals, Bowie similarly creates a very lively, organic, human feel out of what sounds like guitars, drums, bass packed into very digital boundaries. And within these boundaries, Bowie creates beauty but also very intense cacophony too. Just look at the song Blackstar, which, though it is very clearly a rock track at its core, there are a lot of synthetic elements to it. The weird vocal manipulations on Bowie's voice that reminds me quite a bit of Fever Ray, the weird blurty synth stabs that appear here and there throughout the track. The bass instrumentation a lot of the time feels kind of simple, but it's heightened by some great string arrangements and horns too, which appear throughout this record. The first half of this track is very unsettling, it's eerie, it's challenging. More impatient music listeners might be kind of waiting for when the track is actually going to get started. But in the second half, Bowie kind of transitions into something more within his wheelhouse, something with more of a glam style swagger to it, but still remains the weird, unsettling characteristics that were there on the first half of the track. It's a really great two-part song that weaves together all of these really intricate flavors and lyrical themes very well. And if there's another thing that strikes me in terms of the differences between this latest record and Bowie's last record is that he seems to be embracing the weariness of his voice on here in a very big way, like with the cracked yelped vocals on Girl Loves Me, or on the song 'Tis a Pity She Was a Whore, where we have these shaky singing vocals on the verses and these very intense manic shouts in the second half of the track as the instrumentation intensifies, the bass and the drums go way harder, and that's topped with these noisy horns wailing away in the left and right channel. And the lyrics take kind of a vulgar turn, which seemed similar to me in tone to what Lou Reed was doing on that Metallica collaboration Lulu. And before you groan at that comparison, Bowie actually was noted to have enjoyed that record. And it kind of reminds me of Scott Walker's latest output too, with how freakish and vulgar the lyrics get, especially on the song Sue, where Bowie's singing turns similarly ghoulish over a little gnarly bass and guitar riff and drum beat that sounds like it could have come off of Swan's To Be Kind. Sue really sounds like a fusion of Bish Bosh and To Be Kind, but I mean that in the best way possible. And James Murphy of LCD Sound System actually has drum credits on this track and the song Girl Loves Me Too. It's easy to see that Bowie was going for something really visceral and propulsive when it came to the bass and the drums on this LP, given the personnel. And Bowie himself is no stranger to viscera and linear grooves and repetition. Just look at a lot of his art rock records from the past, like Station to Station and Heroes and Low. So in a way on this record, Bowie is kind of returning to his roots, but in the most freakish way possible. Bowie's glam tendencies do show up on this record though, but more on the ballads of the LP, like on Lazarus and Dollar Days and the closing track. And these songs make for a very beautiful contrast to the harder and more aggressive cuts on the LP. The music on this thing is great for the most part. If there's any complaints that I have, it's that sometimes the instrumentation is a little too sanitary, clean, kind of feels like in the digital space where it exists, it doesn't kind of bleed together in the way that live instrumentation would. So I think there's a bit of an organic feel that's kind of lost on some of the more aggressive tracks. And also the weeping harmonica and very sugary synthesizers on the closing track here do feel sort of dated. But it's really the lyrics on this record where this project kind of comes to life for me, or comes to death and turns super surreal, like on Blackstar, which when I first heard it, I thought it was some kind of occult analyzation of Bowie's popularity, fame, relevancy, but now, given his passing and all of the other themes of death that run throughout all these other songs, which are way more obvious in the context of the rest of the record, it seems like Bowie is talking about being a black star in the sense that he is no longer a star that is light or has light. The star is blackened, it's gone dark, and light being life itself, I think. And another thing that kind of struck me when I thought about the music video is that there are moments where an astronaut's suit, broken with a skeleton inside, is kind of portrayed. I'm thinking that's got to be Major Tom, and given the song, it's like the mission that Major Tom was going on, it was like a suicide mission, or he was just going into the great unknown, sort of like how Bowie is on this record over here, which is really intense to think about. You know, I don't think Bowie would have self-referenced so blatantly if it weren't for a purpose, and now that purpose seems super clear. Then there's the song Lazarus, which, if you know the story of Lazarus, he died and came back to life via a miracle 4 days later, and now we have Bowie on this song singing in a way where the lyrics are literally like a transmission from beyond the grave, and he's making observations about how he's up in heaven, and now everybody sort of knows him, which, sure, given his iconic status, isn't really that bold of a prediction that people would be talking about him, his death, but still, it's like too real to hear him singing about it. And in the greatest lyrical coincidence on the entire record, with the track Girl Loves Me, we have Bowie singing Where the Fuck Did Monday Go, and with his announcement of his death from this past weekend, it's like he didn't even make it to the Monday when I'm recording this review. But deeper into the lyrics, it's like I'm listening to the deterioration of Bowie's mental and physical being on this track, as it seems like he is unfamiliar and scared or freaked out or confused by his surroundings or what he sees. He's losing time, he's losing his sensibilities, his sanity. And the song Dollar Days similarly feels like a descent into death as well, especially as Bowie is quite literally singing on this track, I'm dying too. And the closer really does sound like a final goodbye. Surely, without a doubt. It's just really crazy to think of. And there are moments in the lyrics here where I feel like I'm listening to Bowie reach that point where he can't give anymore, can't do anymore, he's been fully drained. Or maybe this song in a way is about parting with his earthly possessions, earthly relevance and fame because he can't take it with him. This is a really strange music listening experience, and a deeply moving one as well. I was getting choked up listening to the record and thinking back to that Major Tom reference in the music video, and just the fact that, I mean, it literally, Bowie is facing death on this record, and quite bravely exploring it. And it seemed like he made his life all about music, and now in his final moments, he decided that, you know, he wanted to spend his last bit of life sort of doing exactly what his life was about and reflecting on where his life was about to go. This is a great record, you know, and I think it's really interesting that Bowie provided a series of songs that it's really no BS. I mean, there's not really a low point on this album. It's almost an hour long, and it seems like every moment is just as essential to the next, and it all plays into this very jaw-dropping, awe-inspiring look at the end of the life of the artist who's actually creating the music here. It's a very surreal experience, and the music would have been great even if Bowie lived on for 5 more years, because it explores these themes so incredibly well and does it with some interesting instrumentation, great sax solos, cool vocal performances that play to the strengths of Bowie's voice at this point in his life, the passion, the emotion, the weariness. I'm feeling a light to decent 9 on this thing. Transition. Have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? Did it shake you deep down below emotionally? Did you feel like you were right there with Bowie at the end of his life on this LP? Let me know. You're the best. Anthony Fantano, David Bowie, rest in peace. Blackstar, forever.